Now, anything that you say is incriminating, so this is where we take it seriously. Don't worry.
Understood. I'll keep it quiet now.
All right. Well, thank you for coming to join me today.
Yeah.
You have come to join me because I recently went to an event of yours that I thought was pretty significant. This is for the People's Housing Project, and this is an organization here in Albuquerque, and I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about PHP.
Yeah, so the People's Housing Project is a grassroots organization that focuses on the issues that are affecting New Mexico's tenants today, particularly Albuquerque. So in the last year, we've seen some pretty severe increases in homelessness, housing insecurity. We are seeing rates of rent going at an alarming rate. It is outpacing people's income rates. And we are concerned at this point, right? We are all aware about Albuquerque's housing crisis, and there's different political forces at play here that are proposing different things. But the People's Housing Project is demanding that Albuquerque treat housing for what it is. It's a human right. We believe that everyone deserves affordable, dignified housing here in Albuquerque.
Well, to start off, I get as an Albuquerque resident who rents, I connect pretty well with that message. I'm very interested in the kind of group that PHP is, the People's Housing Project, and I'm very interested in the kind of role that you play in that and how you got started into a group like that. Housing is definitely something that I think everyone has some stake in, so there's probably nothing you could talk about more that touches to every single Albuquerque resident and what they experience here. And because of that, everyone also has their own opinion on that. What is the makeup of the People's Housing Project, and what are the kind of groups of people that are trying to make an effort in this kind of mission? What is your guys' mission, and who makes up that mission?
Right. So the People's Housing Project, like I said, is a grassroots organization. Every single one of its members, including myself, we are all volunteers. None of us get paid to do this work. What we do, though, is we go out into communities, go out into very specific like apartment complexes, go talk to tenants, sometimes even homeowners of historic neighborhoods here in Albuquerque. And we seek to use our tools and training to empower tenants and homeowners.
All right. What are some of those tools? Because I've actually met some of your tenants in that group, and they've told me about forming tenant unions before. And can you tell me a little bit about that process? What are the tools you guys go out and educate tenants on that they can actually use? If you get to educate our audience today, what are the tools that they have that they can go out and use?
Absolutely. So we will go into an apartment complex and we will try to figure out who is interested in forming, like you said, a tenants association.
And what is that?
A tenants association is a group of at least 3 people, at least 3 tenants in one single complex. And when you come together and announce to the landlord or the managing company, whoever that may be, that you are interested in forming this association, you now have legal protections that allow you to advocate not only for yourself as a single tenant, but for all tenants in your complex.
And what are some of those protections that you gain by getting 3 or more of your tenants together to say, hey, let's group up? What does that give you?
So, for example, one of those protections would be you're protected from retaliation. So your landlord may not fully appreciate you and your fellow tenants advocating for better security or better maintenance or timely responses, whatever the issue may be. Once you are this entity of a tenants association, your landlord cannot retaliate against you. And if in the case that they do, you now have legal recourse. And that is something that we try to do with as many associations as it's appropriate. We try to connect them with legal resources that may help them in their struggle.
Now, I've met some of your tenants who are currently actually facing legal trouble with their landlords because they got into these kind of arrangements with their tenants. Mm-hmm. And as I understand, that's still kind of the bounds of those protections and what all you actually have access to is kind of developing as we speak by our city council, by our state. And that's why I think it was really significant when I got to meet these tenants. They were all out there at your event at a protest I saw over here off UNM. Now, can you give me some background on this event that I attended for those who didn't get a chance to see it? What is it you guys were out there UNM protesting? What is it you were asking for? And who are the kind of people who were there?
Yeah. So the People's Housing Project held a press conference alongside Senator Linda Lopez and Representative Eleanor Chavez with the intent that in the 2024 legislative session, we will be introducing a bill to legalize rent control here in New Mexico.
Now, to make that kind of clear, the signs I saw were in the prohibition on rent control. So this isn't you working with a senator in order to bring rent control to New Mexico. This is allowing the creation of rent control because currently it's actually not allowed to be introduced through legislation. So this is kind of ending that moratorium on that.
Exactly. So this is a baby step in our larger vision of what housing can and should look like here in New Mexico. But right now, as you mentioned, rent control is banned in the state of New Mexico and across many states here in the United States. And so, no, right now we aren't looking for a very specific bill with specific language on what rent control can look like. What this bill would allow for, though, is allowing New Mexico's residents to make that decision, for New Mexico to be able to speak up and advocate for rent control here in the state and what that can look like for us.
So I think that gives a pretty good picture of what the People's Housing Project is, who makes it up, what kind of people are on your side, and what you guys are asking for. Now, the public access station doesn't really have a habit of asking people to come on and promote their politics, and that's kind of not where I'm trying to lead this interview. I think that's a very interesting movement that affects pretty much every Albuquerque resident, and I hope everyone who just saw the last few minutes of our discussion can make kind of their own opinion about those things, whether that's the kind of thing they want to support, they want to not support, and what kind of ways they want to exercise their speech in order to do it. You interested me a lot more in the sense of, as an Albuquerque resident, this is quite a bit for an individual to be taking on in their own time. You're going to other Albuquerque residents and helping them organize into their own collectives as residents to try to have kind of power. That's pretty powerful to me. And you're going to leaders in our community and trying to actually make some legislative change that will affect our residents. That, to me, is something a lot of people don't take the time in their individual time to do. Why did you start doing that? How did you get involved in that process?
Yeah, I mean, I have lived here for most of my life. I have also gone through housing insecurity here in Albuquerque. I've also been personally affected by stagnating salaries combined with rent hikes. Myself, earlier this year, I had to move out of my home of 4, almost 5 years because of those rent hikes. So I had seen the People's Housing Project's work before, and when I was making those considerations of what are my next steps, I decided, well, I'll do what I have to do to survive, and I did end up moving, but also I decided to do something about it, right? At the end of the day, if this is an issue that is going to affect all of us to this degree, to the point where we are genuinely suffering from the stress, the anxiety, the actual repercussions of not being able to pay rent, to not be able to afford your basic needs, someone has to step up and do something about it, right? And thankfully, I knew about the People's Housing Project. I knew that there were resources out there, so I decided to join in the effort to also educate other people, at least with the information that there are other resources out there and you can do something about it, you know?
And it might be good to mention that the People's Housing Project is kind of made of the bones of another activist movement in Albuquerque that actually had some success. We had a pretty successful local soccer team that's been making the moves, and they were looking to build a stadium actually near the community that I currently live in. And you guys organized into a group and helped try to be activist and say, this is going to cost us a lot of money for the city. This is going to wreak havoc on the people who live here. It's going to make this area even more unaffordable as it is. And I might have to agree with that in the sense of, as someone who lives there, I don't know if I could keep living there if there was another stadium right over there driving up costs in the neighborhood. And you guys were able to successfully say, no, not in this community. And now they have had to reconsider and look for new options of where they're going to build the United Stadium. I, as a resident, have been personally affected by the activism that your group was able to push forward. Whether it was for the good or better, I think people can make their own judgments for. But I think it's pretty significant that that's where you guys started, and I was actually personally affected by that activism. Now you guys kind of have recollected to focus what I think is kind of on a broader issue as well, which is the entire housing insecurity that Albuquerque faces. That's quite a wide range of things, and there's the current bill that you're looking to pass. Something similar actually went through our own city council not too long ago, and it astonishingly lost. Our city council absolutely gutted the possibility of rent control in our own city. While I certainly can't make any judgments myself, it's certainly going to be a hard battle to look at the state senate passing something like this. This is pretty hard, and I think you're looking at something that a lot of people have a lot of invested interest in making sure it doesn't happen. What do you do as an individual who's just trying to make a difference for your friends and family? What do you do when you're looking at people who don't want this to happen and they have quite a bit of influence to say it won't? That's you guys have had some success, you've had some loss. Where do you take that? How do you plan your next step?
Right. So the campaign that you're referring to was the Stop the Stadium campaign. And that campaign did successfully put us on the map in the fight and struggle against gentrification. And that is at the core of these rising costs, right? We are looking at a lot of out-of-state investors coming into the state and coming very specifically to Albuquerque, coming to historic neighborhoods like Barelas, and attempting to gentrify, whether that is setting up luxury apartments, as we have seen throughout Nob Hill, or proposing a stadium in the middle of the city, right? So that campaign is something that we still take with us in every single action, and has allowed us to still come back to like the neighborhood of Barelas. And we were able to collaborate with homeowners there who have made their own organization, the residents of Barelas. We call them Las Bareleñas. And they have been very successful, motivated in getting their neighbors moving, right? So when we think about these larger forces that seem inescapable, that seem like they have complete control of our environment, of our livelihood, of our lifestyle, it can be very demoralizing and can push us to lay down and take it, right? It can push us to inactivity. And what the People's Housing Project and all of us that are engaged in that organization are trying to tell everyone is, you don't have to, right? Because we all collectively have people power, right? And so, sure, we are working under the larger ecosystem that is profit driven, right? And we are coming into that stage and saying, actually, what the people want doesn't align here. And we will mobilize people to come together and advocate for how they want their neighborhoods to be, how they want their housing to look like, and what that should look like for all of us together, right?
I like that vision, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's very well put. So I think that, you know, it is a tough fight, and I don't envy the things that you're asking for, in the sense of there's a lot of pushback, but there's a lot of support, and I hope you know there is more support probably than there is vocal for it. It's hard to get people activated in their communities, and as I try to expand my own bubble of activists that I personally know that I've talked to here on Public Access, the one thing I do see is, as hard of a fight as it ever seems, that never seems to turn you away from the need to fight it. And that, I think, is pretty inspiring, hopefully, for anyone, whatever endeavor they're looking to chase. One instance I think I've also seen some success from what you guys do is I went to a mayor's speech last year, this year, towards the end of summer. And there was also activists looking for rent control. And I actually asked one of them kind of about the community that they were in there by the rail yards, is where the speech was being given, and the success they had in that community. And they had told me about there's just a little parking lot that was being used for the farmers market, there used to be a bar there, and that bar was causing havoc in the neighborhood. People were going around, breaking into cars after, causing fights. Police were always over there, and they were able to get rid of that bar. So now it was just a little bit of a quiet neighborhood, and they got that protection. They wanted to actually rezone that property to be a bar again. They wanted to bring back that nuisance to the community. And what they had been able to do is help organize that community to stop that from being rezoned. So I hope people who are watching this and listening to you can take away that whoever your neighbors are, that you have quite a bit of ability to resist anything that you might see might be affecting your way of life, your standard of living. And I hope that's what at least the big takeaway from this interview is. There's this other half of it that I'm really conflicted on, which is the homeless side of Albuquerque. I think a side that is filled with so much pain and so much controversy on what causes these things. How do you go about trying to solve these things? That's not an easy one to address, but yet that's still at the very bottom, not the bottom, but it's on one end of the spectrum for the People's Housing Project. It's at that very hard to grasp and deal with. Not that you have the solutions ready for us on how to help homeless people in Albuquerque, but what is the PHP's kind of approach on dealing with homelessness? How do you guys want to be an advocate for homeless individuals? How do you want to see a difference made for people who are experiencing homelessness?
Right. So the People's Housing Project, first of all, is unfortunately not a mutual aid project, right? We have partnered with mutual aid projects such as Freewheel Mobile Aid. They and organizations like them will go out into communities and provide very direct assistance to homeless people. And that is activity that we absolutely recognize is necessary, right? We're talking about going out and talking to homeless people, providing whatever resources can be given, right? Whether that is as simple as water and food, or blankets and tents, heaters, or even Narcan and other harm reduction tools, right? We are approaching the housing crisis from a prevention standpoint. So while our community partners are dealing with the symptoms of the housing crisis and homelessness, we are looking to have a system where homelessness doesn't happen. This rent control bill is a baby step in that direction. But as we gain more control over what renting looks like and what housing looks like for our community, we can start thinking about how we can actually prevent people from losing housing to begin with, regardless of their circumstances of employment or anything else they might have going on in their lives.
One of the first guests we actually had, that were at least that I got to talk to here on Public Access, was a homeless resident of Albuquerque. And from the other interviews I've done outside of Public Access with the homeless population, the one striking thing I think I always find that everyone has in common is that it started kind of when they were kids. Their parents lost access to housing. They lost access to housing when they lost their access to their parents. That seems to be the root of where a lot of people who never can get off the streets start there. And I think it's important to say that when you look at policies that do help people not be in those scenarios in the first place, you do create a kind of a net to catch people. It's a safety net. And regardless of what I think anyone thinks about the policy of creating that safety net, of trying to approach it from one way or the other, I hope people can at least acknowledge that I've at least discovered through my set of interviews this year that this is where these problems start. And it does start on a community advocating for each other at the end of the road of how you stop creating more and more people to fall into those kind of situations. Nothing's perfect, nothing's foolproof, but I think you guys are at least trying to make a difference, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because I don't think enough people are trying to make a difference in their community. So hopefully for our viewers, however they felt about your organization, whatever you're chasing, hopefully at least inspires people to go make a difference so our communities are better protected and we have more affordable ways to live, because I can at least imagine everyone's invested on that one. Do you have anything that you would like us to know that PHP has coming up that you guys are looking forward to that we should be aware of in case there's something for us to go attend?
Well, stay updated on our social media. We have an Instagram, ABQPHP, and we will be announcing the different rallies and mobilizations starting next year as we look towards the 2024 legislative session.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Emma. I appreciate you talking to me here, and hope everyone has some good holidays coming up. All right.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much.
I think we're good here.